been a while since we made one of these, but after all of the Halloween spooky season that I did on the channel, I obviously collected a bunch of stuff that I watched during that time, and I thought the best way to get some of it off my chest would be a review roundup video. Hi, my name's Durin. Welcome to another review roundup on Flying Wiener. Now, usually when I do these roundup videos, I present them in the order that I like them, the three films or TV shows that I have chosen. In this case, that is not exactly the truth, because I thought, just because there was so much going on about these TV shows on the internet, I thought I'll do them sort of in the order of most controversial to least controversial. So the three TV shows I'm talking about, the first one is Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, which was on Netflix. Then the second one is Lord of the Rings of Power on Amazon, and the last one is She-Hulk Attorney at Law on Disney+. And in my opinion, that is the order in which they were controversial. So Dahmer was the most controversial, then you have the Rings of Power, and then She-Hulk. If you want to skip ahead to any of these, you can use the bar down below. If you use that, I've got timestamps in the description as well, if you're interested in any of the other ones first. Anyway, so we'll jump right into it. Jeffrey Dahmer is a person I'm really fascinated by. I'll be honest, I do like true crime. I know that is a very controversial topic in and of itself, and this is exactly why this show was so controversial. I'm of the opinion, at least for me, I don't glorify these killers, not in any way, but to me it is just utterly baffling how someone, a human being, could arrive at a point where they can do such gruesome things to another human being, or multiple in this case. And it's just something that goes against my very nature, and that is why ultimately I'm fascinated by these things. But the reason this series is controversial is because a lot of people feel that Jeffrey Dahmer is being humanized, even glorified. They try to portray him in a more sympathetic way. That is actually not my opinion. I don't share that. While I feel it's necessary to have insight into his life, if what were the things that happened, or obviously some of the dramatized things, obviously some things are fictional, but still, just trying to make an attempt at explaining how he got to be who he was. And I don't feel that he is being glorified or anything like that. It's just made more understandable, I feel. I did not coming out of it going, Jeffrey Dahmer was an awesome guy. I also, unlike many people, did not have a craving to dress up as Jeffrey Dahmer, because that is just insane if you ask me. Anyway, focusing on the show itself, I feel what they do really well is actually tell the tale of the victims. And you have some episodes where Jeffrey Dahmer barely even appears in it because we're so focused on the victims that he had. And I feel that is really important, and that is something I definitely commend this show for. And then talking about Jeffrey Dahmer himself, Evan Peters is an actor I have liked quite a lot over the years, particularly from all sorts of things he did with American Horror Story, but I also loved him as Quicksilver, for instance, in the Fox X-Men films. And I suppose you could say one certain Disney Plus show. Anyway, we won't talk further about that. But yes, and his performance really is amazing. He plays all these dark guys, it seems to be what he really loves, but I feel that he did a really good job, because afterwards, watching some documentaries on Jeffrey Dahmer, I feel that he really nailed the voice and just the mannerisms and all these things. I mean, really such a weird, detached person, and by detached I mean from the human race. So it's just, to me it is more from a fine morbid curiosity, scientific perspective that I look at these true crime things, because it's just so hard to wrap my head around someone being like that. Now, I highly recommend it because I feel it is a really well-made show. The look and feel of it is great, the 70s, 80s, etc. It really feels like that. The design is good, the lighting, the colours, and ultimately the acting. So I feel that if you can stomach what he's done, because like I say, it's really just terrible thinking about it even, but if you can stomach that, I say definitely watch the show, because I feel it gives a lot of interesting insight. Next we've got Lord of the Rings, or Rings of Power. It is on Amazon. Now, if you're not familiar and thought Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit was all there was, I have some news for you. I knew this years ago after the Lord of the Rings. I kind of got stuck into the books and I read pretty much every single one of them at least once, I think. And There is actually worlds that he built before then, as in the story of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings is the third age, as it's called, of Middle-earth, and there are actually two previous ages. And the Rings of Power actually is mainly focused on the second age, but we also hear a bit about what happened in the first age. And you know, it's actually a lot deeper, if you ask me. It's a lot more fascinating, at least from a fantasy perspective. There are a lot more fantastical elements here. You know, a lot more magical stuff and all these kind of things, where the story of The Lord of the Rings almost feels like, you know, normal medieval times, I'll call it. Anyway, if you're not familiar, we are focused on various characters because there just are many that exist in this world, and I won't delve too deeply into that because it would, you know, just be too long for this video. But we follow along certain groups of people, like we've got Galadriel, who you will hopefully know from The Lord of the Rings. She is played by Morfydd Clark. She's got a storyline where she does not believe that Sauron is gone and she is hunting him. This is before The Lord of the Rings, so he was gone once before already. Not to confuse that. You've got another storyline with the Harfoots. They're like a precursor of the Hobbits that we are familiar with. And just as an example, just because I thought it was really funny in the role, you've got Lenny Henry playing a Hobbit there, and it's really fun because they've given them Irish accents, and it was fun to hear Lenny Henry speaking up, in my opinion, good Irish accent. So we're following these Hobbit precursors along. They stumble upon a stranger, you know, it's a guy who literally falls from the sky in a meteor, and, you know, try and figure out who he is, and they're trying to find, you know, a place that they can travel to because they're very nomadic people. And then you've got a storyline with Elrond, who you will hopefully also remember from The Lord of the Rings. He is a half-elf. And you've got the dwarves. In this case, so we've got Durin the Fourth in Khazad-dûm, which is a place that appeared in the very first Lord of the Rings films, The Fellowship of the Ring. And those two, Elrond is played by Robert Aramayo, and Durin is played by Owen Arthur. And I like all these storylines. Now, the reason this show is controversial is, well, you can actually take your pick. You've either got the Tolkien purists who are like, Amazon has, you know, they've added things into here, they've changed elements, etc., etc. Well, yes, because unfortunately, while Tolkien created these worlds, you know, he didn't write encyclopedias on them. So you will have to fill in gaps. And if you feel you need to change something to make the story work better and flow better, you know, I feel that is okay, because you're getting the main message across, and that is important here. And on top of everything else, you're getting a lot of people interested in all these fantasy things. You know, the other controversy was because you've got, I don't know, you've got, for instance, you've got, like Lenny Henry, you've got black people playing hobbits or dwarves or whatever. A lot of people got up in arms about that because Tolkien wrote this as a mythology for Central Europe, and of course back then you would have had just a few black people and all these things. I don't get into these kind of things. You've got orcs with green skin, you've got elves, you've got dwarves, etc. Who cares which colour of their, you know, which colour skin they've got? I don't care about these issues. But I will say that I like all this world building. It's very classical fantasy. I feel very high fantasy, you could call it as well. It's a bit of a slow burn, so you might feel, my wife for instance felt very lost at the beginning. I had to fill in a lot of her gaps. So they definitely did a bit of a bad job there. And the first few episodes, they feel like they're dragging along because we've got so much setup going on. But once it gets going, I thought it was a lot of fun, the whole thing, and I really enjoyed it. Also, they spent so much money on this. I mean, one single episode cost more than a lot of films that were made. You know, really crazy to think about. I think one episode is like $60–70 million, something like that. And you can see it, the set designs, the CGI, it's all magnificent. I really liked it a lot. And because we've got so many characters, just to pick out ones that I really, really liked, I enjoyed a lot the relationship between Elrond and Durin. I felt that is one of the highlights of the show. I recommend it if you like Lord of the Rings and fantasy and these kind of things. I will definitely be looking forward to the second season, where I feel that they'll be attempting to streamline it a bit better, you know, and make it more accessible in that way. We've done all the setup, so that should be fine. And lastly, we've got She-Hulk Attorney at Law, which is the newest Disney Plus show. I follow all the MCU shows on Disney Plus. We watched this as well, my wife and I, and I will say it was a very enjoyable ride. Now, it is a bit hit and miss, I will say that. It wasn't overly popular. not at least not throughout the whole show. It was controversial on the internet because, I don't know, you got so many people up in arms about the, you know, being a female Hulk, although she's existed in the comics for ages, of course, and some of the storylines, people not being fans of what they were doing with the show and the characters in the MCU and all sorts of stuff. So controversial, I will say, you know, at least within the comic book sphere, you know, not as if they caused big controversies, not like Jeffrey Dahmer, you know, not like that. So we're focused on, well, She-Hulk, of course. She is played by Tatiana Maslany. Very well, I will say. She is definitely a highlight of the show. I mean, a great lead, a great actress, you know, for She-Hulk. And we're following her along in her daily life as an attorney and the sort of things that she gets into. And of course, there are superhuman things that go on, etc. But that is more of a side story. The thing is presented as a sitcom, so we have just, you know, every episode feels a bit different because of that. At least we have got more or less contained stories within an episode, and that is quite fine. But for me, the whole thing felt a bit directionless because, you know, it was like, okay, you know, you've got little episodes happening and they were fun at times, but it felt like, you know, but are we moving towards something bigger here, or what's going on? I mean, I would say probably if you are looking for an overarching story, at most it would be her trying to find the balance between being She-Hulk and just having a personal life. And that I found really interesting. That is something we don't see too much of in the MCU, so I really like that. Not only seeing, you know, how do you balance these kind of things, because in her case it's really different, you know, it's not like with most others who just put on a costume. I mean, she is literally someone different, while still retaining all her mind and, you know, thoughts, etc., characteristics. But at the same time, it's just interesting seeing various legal issues that are brought into this, because I've always thought, you know, you don't need to have superhero stories. You could be in the MCU and just tell the stories of regular people within a superhuman world. I mean, last week I talked about My Hero Academia, and that is what I feel interesting, is what happens to society when you have these beings there, these people who have got all these powers. And so we explored this a bit, and I thought that was real fun, so I liked that aspect of it. And like I say, generally I liked it. The feel of it was good. I felt if you're an adult, so mid-30s like I am, I feel that this is a really good show for you. You know, if you've got an office job and all these things, you can relate to a lot of things that go on here. The typical MCU things, you know, they're just very sparsely used, and which is fine. I mean, I could have done with a bit more, just a bit more, but they have got a very surprising ending, which was really cool. I really enjoyed that quite a lot. And remembering now, one of the big controversies was the CGI, which I find is ridiculous. We're talking about a TV show after all. And when you compare it to TV shows from 15 years ago, etc., it's just ridiculous. You know, I felt the CGI was fine, okay, it wasn't the best it could be, but it doesn't need to be. You know, it's not like this thing would attract so many viewers to begin with, and they still put in so much money, you know. So I felt it was fine, it was okay, I enjoyed it. So, you know, it's a fun ride. It definitely got a lot of humour in it and a few surprises. Bit too many cameo type things, I will say. I felt they overdid that a bit. Overall, very enjoyable. You know, I look forward to seeing She-Hulk in the future because, like I say, Tatiana Maslany is really great in this role. Okay, that's all from me today. You know, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe. It is the best way to support this channel. Leave a comment down below about any of the three. What did you think about them? You know, either controversies or the content, or, you know, how do you feel they fit in with legacies? I mean, talking specifically about Lord of the Rings and She-Hulk, of course. How do they fit in their various fandoms, etc.? All these kind of things down in the comments below. I'll thank you again for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one on Flying Wiener. Take care.